Hey guys, hope you're doing well today. As you can see, I'm here with a special guest. This is Alec of Draconem Media, Draconem Records, and as many Joburg bands and fans know, one of the more popular figureheads involved in a number of bands, including Certus, Adherent Anomaly, what's Adherent Anomaly? And Forsaken Fate, I believe you've just joined also now as a live bassist, as well as a number of other bands. But yeah, let me stop jibber jabbering. Welcome, Alec. Good to see you, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, bro. It's good to do one of these things. It's always fun to talk shit about metal.
Yeah, man. I gave this a go last week with Francois and the Peter of Fallen Prophets, and that was interesting. It was good to get their thoughts on the whole lockdown situation. So I guess we kind of start off our conversation with the same idea. How
Yeah,
are things there in Johannesburg? How's lockdown been?
lockdown's been busy, bro. I guess like a lot of metalheads aren't really lucky in the sense that they not necessarily have the greatest jobs. I think like metal attracts a lot of like outcasts and whatnot. So like I've been very blessed to be able to, carry on working during this period, have like my standard working arrangement. Recently I've worked mostly from home anyway, so it hasn't really affected me. Um, I've also been busy in my spare time with a lot of musical stuff, but we can get to that as we.
Yeah, that's a whole other side of the story. You've been involved in a lot of creative processes in the last like 3 months of lockdown. Um, Most notably, I believe you are reaching the conclusion of the follow-up new Certus album. I believe you guys
I
are
wish it was
reaching.
the conclusion, bro, but a lot of the time I work on solo stuff because it's easier than all the moving parts of a band. So, like the Certus album pre-production was basically done before um, lockdown even began, and so like all the songs are now like fully recorded. It's just vocals, and our vocalist is obviously not here with me, and social distancing dictates that he can't come and spray my mic with his filthy germs.
Yeah, it's. I guess it's to be expected. I mean, we'll give it a couple more weeks before hopefully we drop to another stage, but we'll wait and see how that pans out. In the meantime, something quite exciting happened during the process. We were able to come up with a wicked little agreement between Draconem Records and MMD Records on releasing well, I guess we can call a remastered, but a reworked version of a popular Heel Liquor track, which is another pseudo personality of yours. But this was a little bit different because you got to include your now fiance, Chelsea, and she's one of the more like brutal female vocalists to come out of SA. But yeah, tell me the creative process in writing with your partner. Uh, Slightly different from that of another band?
No, not really, man. Like she featured vocally, but I wrote everything, so it's not like I had to take into account her sort of feelings or whatnot. She did help, and like she always everything I do, she'll listen with the most critical, but like positively critical ear. Like she'll be like, no, please don't do spoken word during that part, or no, please don't clean sing that part. Well, like she gives very good feedback, and that's kind of what you expect in a partner. It can sometimes cause tension, be like, it's my music, I'm right, but she does ultimately always give me feedback. And I mean, it's not the first time her and I did that synthwave project together, Source Control. And yeah, she was with that. She sat next to me while I was on Guitar Pro, tabbing out the MIDI, and she would like hum a section, and I'd be like, figure it out, and so she would give ideas that way. But yeah, with Helica, it's my baby, and I was like, I want you in because she's worked very hard to become not your typical female vocalist. A lot of female vocalists you can hear it's a lady, and I know some of the feminists might get up in arms because I'm like saying that I can hear that it's a woman, but you can because of the range. We built differently. And if you can ignore that, then whatever, then you're just stupid.
Some people don't know. It's ironic. A lot of people didn't know, but to the average metalhead, like the person that actually knows extreme metal, you can definitely tell the high range and the certain levels of bass that are missing when it comes to the female growls. That being said, obviously there's been countless female vocalists that have come out that obviously as a musician, you just adapt to the key of her strengths. And I mean, obviously I think Hunting Hominids obviously played well to the idea in your mind of we needed something with a little bit more high end, but still with a little bit more low guttural. It kind of gave a more hillbilly slam effect to the tune, a bit more raw, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's also like, to pat myself on the back, I have a large range in terms of my vocal style, and that might make me sound like an arrogant asshole, but I'll just take that one on the chest. And it's nice to have someone more adept and slightly higher range. But that being said, I mean, her focus as a vocalist from the start has always been trying to get as low as possible. That's been her focus. So like if you listen to, she's done her covers now, she's in the range. She sounds like Angela in Arch Enemy, Arch Enemy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And Angela is like quite a good bar to set for a female vocalist.
Definitely.
But now she's focusing on going lower than that. Like she wants to be like a Ben Dewar of Shadow of Intent or an Alex Terrible from Slaughter to Prevail. Right. That's what her goal is. And I'm like, it's a hectic goal because those are
it's low.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you guys have worked obviously together in Momentum, which is kind of also another different type of project. Maybe you can actually tell the viewers a little bit about that if they haven't heard about the project.
Yeah, so Momentum, the tagline for Momentum is what has 3 basses and 4 assholes? Momentum. So it's 3 basses and a drummer. I'm the lead vocalist. Chelsea and Simon, who's the bassist of Certus, do backing vocals. And then we have Dave Dippenaz, the drummer. He played for a band called Sordid, which was like I don't even know how to describe them. They've got like elements of groove metal, elements of new metal, and like it's like quite new metal-esque. So
I definitely think you guys have that vibe with it. If you hear some of the tunes, it's got like a lot of almost a gent type feel, but still a lot of groove metal elements in it.
Yeah. So yeah, Momentum, the idea was, well, the basic story was I was in Certus, and then when I started dating Chelsea at I think it was our year anniversary. I could be wrong. It might have been like a 6-month anniversary, but her dad's actually quite a prolific bassist, or he was back in the day. And she wanted to follow in her dad's footsteps. So at that 6-month or year anniversary, I bought her a 5-string bass because why get a 4-string when you can have a 5-string? And then from then on, she was like learning a bit of the Certus riffs and, like just jamming. And then she didn't really pick it up like she wanted to. And she was like, I really want to be in a band because it'll force me to get better, skill up. So I was like, whatever, we finished the first Certus album, let's start another band. And at that time, I was very much into Black Tongue, which is like a down-tempo deathcore band with like a really low tune guitars.
Okay.
If you look at it, it's like drop D an octave lower, so it's just like mud when they hit an open chord. And I looked at this and I was like, it'd be cool to do that in standard tuning on a guitar, on like a 6-string, and then just put these like really, really thick strings on that 6-string. But like all the research was like, oh, it's going to be like a stuff up with the neck. It's going to be like so much tension. And I was like, I don't want to buy another guitar. I have a bass. And I was like, well, why don't we do something that's not really done that much and just have bass guitars only. And I mean, people get surprised when they see us live because the bass guitars sound like electric guitars because they're still being played through distortion. It's still cranked to metal mode, except for Chelsea, who's playing the bass, you know?
It's actually quite crazy, quite a crazy type of style. I have seen a few people online try this vibe, but I mean, you guys definitely have something unique going with it, which kind of brings me to like the next kind of, let's call it topic. The number of subgenres that usually are in the minds of people when they think of South African metal tend to be a lot more around the brutal death slam styles. Obviously, we could probably sum that up to Vulvodynia and their really long other project being able to make waves abroad. But as in terms of Joburg, subgenres, what are the genres that people tend to be quite interested in? Because I mean, I've heard of thrash bands, brutal death, melodic death. There's symphonic. I mean, Certus is basically like a symphonic blackened death band. So, I mean, what are the genres that are really getting listeners like going nowadays? Is it like Cape Town where metalcore rules the world there, and you know?
I think metalcore will always rule the world, and like it's more palatable, right? Extreme metal has always been for like the elite few, whereas metalcore has a broader appeal. And like, I'm not totally against all metalcore. I prefer it when a person can sing and then sings, you know, not this like boy band effect on their vocals. And then when they play live, they sound like a dying walrus trying to sing, you know. I can't stand that sort of approach. And that's kind of why, like, with melodic death metal, there's like that middle ground of melodic death to metalcore. And if I'm going to get into a metalcore band, they must be closer to the melodic death side, you know. I find like a lot of melodic death, the guys can sing. Like if you look at like Scar Symmetry, the first vocalist, Christian Avelstrom, was an amazing singer. He still is. Like he's harsh and he's clean. When he left, they had to replace him with 2 guys, you know, a clean vocalist and a harsh vocalist. In metalcore, it's generally the guitarist or the bassist that's singing the clean backups, and it's all studio effort. No, like
I've seen it live. Sometimes a live performance on the backing vocalist or the clean vocalist never really sticks as well as the main frontman, and that's in a live concert setting. You know, it's just the way it goes. I guess it's like, I guess that's why the necessity of deathcore became such a thing, where people were like, okay, we're not gonna even deal with the clean vocals. You just play to your strength, which is hard guttural, and we'll still do the same chuggy noted, you know, metalcore type riffage, but you know, just raw now. And I mean, that's brought about a whole bunch of new subsects where even bands like the Fallen Prophets sometimes get pigeonholed as being deathcore. because if they're much to Peter and Francois' dismay, there have been people that and reviewers internationally that went and referred to them as that, where I kind of listen to them and I think of them more as a traditional death metal, almost like a bloodbath type scenario, you know, like a homage to the old school with new production.
Yeah.
But in terms of a band like Surdus, your guys' first album was had quite a bit more of a symphonic like element, where I believe you told me that the new album is going a little bit more black and death in some of its ethos.
I think it's more melodic death, but the first album was composed and written without a keyboardist, and we now have a keyboardist, and the guy's like a boffin when it comes to like writing stuff that we can't even comprehend. He studied music, me as an engineer and Simon as a mathematician. Cool, the logic checks out, but we're not very necessarily trained in like, what does a bassoon sound like? I don't know. So it's actually going to be probably a lot more orchestrated because we have this new guy at our disposal, you know, that can be like, I think we need a clarinet here. Oh, I would have never thought that. I just know violin, cello, and French horn, you know, or like the string ensemble, whatever that is, you know.
Hey, in this country does need some band that gets a little bit more, dare I say it, symphonic, you know, like orchestrated, if I dare say. So, I mean, definitely like the live performance. How much time and effort usually comes into this? Obviously, now having a live, somebody to actually add live symphonic elements is going to add a huge new dynamic to the live performance. I'm sure it has to.
Yeah, it has to.
But how much preparation is usually needed in the case of this, in the case of a band like Surdus, compared to the other ones, which...
Dude, it was so hectic. Like, I would always be like taking, okay, at this venue, we've got this many DIs, so this is how I can set up a track. You know, I can set up the track to just be a click to the left and all the symphonic to the right because there's only one extra DI. Or this venue has a lot more to offer, so I can put choirs here, a click here, violins, you know, like, it was like a proper mission. But what was more irritating was you pitch up at a gig and there would be a 3-piece band, and like I have nothing against 3-piece bands. I'm in one in Forsaking Fate, right? But you'd have a 3-piece band that was guitar, bass, drums with one of the guys doing vocals, and they'd be given the same amount of time to set up as a band with 3 vocalists, a keyboardist now, a drummer, and like the technical difficulties that come with having backtracks. And like, honestly, also like people used to look down on us. Like, we got, like, I don't know if I can really say this, but we basically got disqualified from the one Wacken Metal battle because we had symphonic backing tracks instead of a keyboardist. It was at the stage when we didn't have a keyboardist. And we're like, why are we getting disqualified? And they're like, no, you know, you would have done so well if you had a keyboardist. And I'm like, does the keyboardist do choir, cello, all the stuff at once? Like, surely we should be like given props for the fact that we can play perfectly in time to an unforgiving backtrack. And that, you know, like, we're trying to sound like our album. Like, we can take away all the stuff and have one keyboardist, but then we're missing elements from the album, you know? But that being said, like, at the moment...
It is what it is. Hopefully we can all... hopefully the critics will be biting their tongues after the new release comes and you guys are actually able to play it out live, which is going to probably be quite a fun experiment. I mean, that being said, while we're talking about bands, obviously, if anybody knows you well, they know that you've just joined the local Johannesburg band Forsaking Fate as their
East
now
London band, right?
live
East London band.
British.
Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I was going to say, so how does that make it like? How does this make you feel now? Obviously, we're in the middle of a lockdown, but I believe you guys have been working on a new EP also for that, which has been making progress.
Forsaking Fate is it's like almost like a heartbreaking, heart-wrenching story, bro. Because I joined them as like live bassist, but more in a session capacity before the last Wacken Metal Battle, because they were in the final. And they hit me up 7 days before their final performance and said, "Can you learn 4 songs?" And I was like, "I can try, because your music is bloody fast and bloody hard." And yeah, so I jammed with them at the Wacken final. And then because they're so far away, I mean, they're in East London, I'm in Joburg, they haven't done much since. I mean, they came down to play Spawnfest. And I had a bachelor's that night, so they got one of the Deadline guitarists to stand in on bass. And then they came and they played their EP launch, which was really a killer show down in Joburg, and that I could actually perform in. And then earlier this year, they did the EP launch in PE, which was awesome. It was great traveling there. It was also great getting all my shit stolen because thanks PE. But
What? Man, yeah, I believe that wasn't the first time that you had a bit of trouble missioning back and having gear and stuff stolen. Believe traveling back from Botswana, the one time there was also a similar thing with a roadblock or something.
Yeah, so Botswana was hectic because there's just, bro, this is Africa and there's so much corruption. They let us in with all our gear, no permits needed, whatever. And they said, just write a list, stamp it, and it's fine. We came back and they're like, "You bought all this stuff. We want you to pay import duties." And we're like, "Here's the list that we filled out and signed, and you guys stamped." And they're like, "It's not good enough." And I'm like, "It is good enough. We must go. We must leave." And then just after that, I'm doing 70. I have cruise control in my car. 70 in an 80 zone, but the other cars in my convoy were pushing it a little bit, and they got pulled over, and I'm like, well, they were speeding, so stuff them. So I just carried on, and the cop ran out into the road to pull me over as well. And I was like, what? And he shook his gun and his handcuffs at me and was like, "You were speeding. Why weren't you listening to me? Just get off the road. Come, let's do the fine." And when I was like, "Can we talk about this?" He's like, "You can talk in jail if you want." So I try to ask questions like, when last was this speed test calibrated? Because I was doing 70 on cruise control, which means I was probably doing 66 in an 80 zone. And how could I have been doing 87? And yeah. So yes, there's cuck with traveling in South Africa, but I wouldn't give it up, man.
It's not as glamorous. The rock and roll life ain't as glamorous as. Well, I was going to say the rock and roll life ain't as glamorous as everybody makes it out to be.
Dude, it's
there's a lot of to put it lightly. Obviously, this lockdown has screwed up a lot of. As far as clubs here in Cape Town, there's probably going to be quite a few clubs that have actually closed down, including Mercury Live and Gandalf's, but might be more in the future. Up there in Johannesburg, how are things prepared going forward? I mean, I know you guys have always had 3 or 4 stable clubs there in Johannesburg that have always had events. What are your thoughts after this lockdown ends? How long do you see before people actually start coming to shows again?
Yeah, it's difficult. I don't even know when this lockdown will end fully. So like it's like a weird sort of stuff. And
People
also like,
overseas do not understand it. Overseas people do not understand how we have been kept so in the dark here in South Africa, whereas all the other countries are already starting to look into opening up their borders and stuff. But it seems so far away right now, that reality of tourism opening up and airlines opening up internationally for here, I it just feels like we haven't even had our cigarettes decriminalized yet. It's like, we're still in prohibition times. People are making pineapple beer and,
yeah, I mean, it used to be as
smoking
bad,
onion
right?
leaves. Yeah, it's bad, man. I mean, the metal scene up in Joburg, obviously it's a lot more, I would say it's almost more congested with bands, but because of I think there's a little bit more of a support base there. You guys are still able to pull a relatively decent crowd generally at the concerts. Do you see all the clubs that have been hosting events still going after this? I mean,
So
it's my biggest concern.
so I think Rumors is run by like a really smart guy. His name's Fred Otto, and I think he's been around the block. I don't know what he did before he started Rumors, but I mean, it will always go. I'm pretty confident that the guy had some battle plan in place immediately when lockdown was announced, and I'm pretty sure that as soon as that reopens, it's going to be crowded. And I mean, he has a few. I haven't really kept up to date with which ones are active at the moment because it's like a franchise now. Um, Arguably, they used to have the best venue, and it was right above Cresta, and um, obviously that prime real estate must have been costing so much. So it lasted, I think, like 2.5 years, and then it split into smaller venues. And clearly, with the amount that he was saving on moving from a big place to all these small places, it was worth it. So I reckon that will always be around. To be honest, we haven't really had any other venues other than Rumors for a long time. I mean, we used to have an awesome venue in Pretoria called Volma, and there it was like almost on a plot, and there was like place for people to set up camping. When there was an event, they would hire security. There would be like chemical toilets, 2 like outdoor stages. It was really cool, but obviously economically unviable. So
I guess
yeah.
this kind of brings me to I guess this brings me to the next question. It's been spoken about a while ago, and obviously Ramfest have just instigated getting back into the game. They brought Black Dahlia Murder down from the US, and I believe I was up in Japan at the time, but I believe both of the concerts went down like a bomb. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on bringing back outdoor extreme alternative, like the idea of an alternative festival? Do you think there is market for it here in South Africa?
The one thing that's really cuck about South Africans, and especially South African metalheads, is I think there's an assumption that South African metal is an inferior quality. Actually, in general, South Africans have this sort of thing, like South African products, especially entertainment, are inferior. There's no, like pride in it. So like, if I can contrast it, my sisters live in Australia, and like Australians will almost only watch Australian-made movies, almost only listen to Australian-made music, whereas South Africans, because we've been exposed to like our South African-made soapies, like uber budget movies, And for the longest time, South African metal musicians like not giving a shit what they sounded like. Like there's this assumption that South African metal is bad, and that's why you see a ton of people crawling out the woodwork for international shows that you'll never ever see at a local concert, right?
It's true. True.
Bands are also at fault though, because like it's great to tour and it's great to play lots of shows in the beginning, but eventually, if you're playing a show every weekend, why should I come watch you every weekend? I can see you next weekend. And eventually that becomes, I can see you next month. Eventually that becomes, I can see you in 6 months' time. Who cares? You know, we tour to build up experience and then we don't put on the brakes. We just keep playing shows because it's so much fun, but we don't think about necessarily about the shows that we play. So in terms of the question outdoor festival, I think it would be really cool. I think it would be great if someone like Ramfest could get behind it, bring out an extreme metal band like Black Dahlia Murder, but then have extreme metal bands play. You know, I loved Ramfest and I love what they do, but there was basically no extreme metal. It was Black Dahlia and then a whole bunch of rock bands / metalcore / like, but mostly rock. Like, it doesn't really compute in my mind. That's like bringing out like Cannibal Corpse and having a pop rock band open for them. You know, it doesn't really work in my mind. So yeah, I think it'd be cool to have an outdoor festival. I just don't know if just local acts can pull the crowd needed to make it worth it.
I have spoken to a number of people and they say multi-genre probably is the way to go. If you brought in a number of extreme alternative genres like dark wave and synth wave to bring in that market, even bring in stuff like psytrance for the certain time of the day where the people would like that, but not necessarily the metalheads like that, even bring in stuff like reggae, which is also very rebellious, and bringing all of that together as a molding pot with some rock, and then obviously building it up musically to a headliner who's hopefully an extreme metal band. You know, it's like, again, we know the reality of the matter. If an organizer or promoter had to go cough up 5 to 10 million, they could probably bring down almost any international band. But whether or not it's good for the music scene locally, it's not really the case. And that's kind of the problem. I mean, nobody really thinks of the opening acts when it comes to like a big concert. It's always that band that opened up for Iron Maiden or that band that opened up for Metallica. It's just, you know, it's never really touches sides, although that band will go advertise it for ages on. I think the key thing, like you say, is that people need to get a little bit more behind our local product, which is exactly why you and I have been working together since we started speaking almost a year ago. Obviously, production as well as visual aesthetics, like artwork for releases, is something that both of you and I agree on highly. It's one of the main critical things for people to see what the product is. I mean, when I used to go to a CD shop, I would just look for the most extreme looking gory cover that I could, and it's like all the most like darkest forest shot with the most esoteric font that I could find, and it's like, oh, what's this? This looks like it says Satiricon, and you know, and that's how I found new music. So I mean, obviously, all of those graphic designers tend to be internationally based. So what you have done with the likes of Surdus and like all of your bands, as a matter of fact, and what we've been trying to do with MMD Black with the bands, it's definitely something we agree on. But what do you think the solution is for this issue here that we have with the bands now? I mean, like, I was going to leave this question for a bit later, but considering we're talking about promoting, might as well mention the whole merchandise range that we've now set up with Teesprings for the bands. But maybe you want to just actually like tell us a little bit about that and how you came about the whole idea of this dropshipping site Teespring.
So it's called Draconem Store, but to take you into that, I'd like to like dive back into some like semi-ancient history. Before, no, like back in the day when Certus was basically melodic death metal, no orchestration, nothing. Chelsea and I wrote for the Metalist ZA, and Chelsea was a photographer for them, and we were collabing and writing stuff and taking photos and reviewing and whatnot. But the culture there, it should have been called the metalcoreist. No, it shouldn't have been called the metalist. Like anything in extreme, they didn't really give a shit. And the final sort of nail in the coffin was, like hosting a show and then basically we having a decent turnout, but then getting a contact saying, you must pay the bands less and give us half the money, half of the takings for the event. And I'm like, your artwork's not worth half the takings. They wanted us to give a band like Spectral Realm like $80. There's 6 members in the band. Like where do you like count, like factor that in? And so we like put our foot down and we're like, screw this, and we started Draconem Media as a website. And I went for the, it's professional to have a .com. Set up WordPress, did all this like graft, and we wrote articles for Witch Doctor stuff. We went to the first Witch Fest for free because we were doing, like press related stuff, and we did this quite a lot. But we sort of slowed down on that while I was working on the album because, frankly, I preferred making music more than writing about it. Like I want to write music. I don't want to write about why someone's production is bad or why their production is great. And basically, the nail in the coffin was us getting our passes revoked from an international show because the band submitted an interview with spelling mistakes. The band. We uploaded it at 6 a.m. before work, and we missed the spelling mistake, and our passes were revoked. And we're like, I'm over this, like, this like calling us out for professionalism when said organizer just kept canceling international shows. Like you can't call us out for professionalism when you can't organize your own shit. And that sort of like articles were winding down. I was getting overriding. So that was like basically the nail in the coffin. And then like the whole Certus album came out, and I was like, sure, there's a lot of stumbling blocks to producing a high quality album. We recorded our first track, and we didn't get the quality that we wanted. We actually went to a studio and we're like, oh, this is what we're getting back. This is not the quality we want. So like then I went through the process of chatting to the guys in Spectral Realm, going like, where did you do your first album? It's killer. How did you do it? And they hooked me up with a guy that I'm biased, but I say is the best metal producer in the country, Alan Perkis of Dreamlab. But like saying that, I know that there's tons of great producers. I'm set in my ways.
But he puts good music, and like I won't lie, he does some quality work. I mean, he really does. I mean, I put it like himself, as far as representing up your side, up the entire Johannesburg area, he's probably mastered some of my favorite releases to come out of that area. Heinrich Kollner of Burning Tone also does great work down here in Cape Town. But as you say, there are a number of engineers across the board that are all quality. Jethro Milestone's also fantastic. There are guys all over. But yeah, I mean, Yeah, Dreamlab has definitely helped help the sound of the Draconem represented bands.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
yeah, like that's basically on my next point. After that, like going through the whole process of the Certus album, bashing my head against artwork and bashing my head against CD printing and all the like journey that goes with that, I was like, there's a whole bunch of it, like advice that I can give now. So I started a record label with the idea of basically helping other bands produce music to the quality that I think they should be aiming for. I think the mistake I made was like sort of the insistence of like the process. You will use Alan. You won't track drums yourself because you're going to stuff it up. Like I'm very set in my ways, and I guess that's
you sound
why.
like every other record. You sound like every other record label owner on the planet, man. If you didn't have your opinion about something, why would you do it? But that being said, you also act as a loose consultancy agency for a lot of bands. Well, you did for quite a while as well. Like, kind of pulled the veil, like out, pulled the curtain out, and actually showed bands like the business side of actually what it takes to be a band. And I don't think a lot of the local bands realize the effort that goes into it. I mean, you're creating essentially a brand, so. Yeah.
My heart breaks also when I see bands being taken advantage of. Like I see bands paying like $4,000 a track and like it's sounding like dog shit in the end. And I'm like, it's so like hard to see that because like you can do things well and cheaply. Alan, the reason I like working with him, Alan's main job is he's a composer for film and for video games. That's his bread and butter. That's all he does every day. He used to contract at a company when I was a technical lead at a game dev studio in Joburg. He used to consult with us because I brought him in. And his hourly rate was like basically the equivalent of him doing 2 hours to work on a track. But he spent a lot longer than that because, he was making all this cheddar off like doing it professionally that when it came to helping me and other bands, he didn't really need to charge us ridiculous rates. But he's clearly capable of doing that because he's charging like, this game studio.
Justified.
Yeah, like he's charging a game studio like $70 an hour or something like that, to do something.
I think that's kind of another aspect that we could probably chat about. How, like, DIY the metal scene here actually is in South Africa, to the point of bands literally manufacturing their own bunch of CDs and having to source their own manufacturers in whatever geographic location they're based. I mean, I guess that's another reason why you and I have kind of come together, trying to bring our strengths together to try and just create a little bit more solidarity in the metal scene, because we are a family. But I still think that there's this whole idea of every band wanting to be the best and be the one to get signed to the big international label. And the ironic thing is that in our times of being here in South Africa and being metalheads, in the 25 odd years of the metal industry here in South Africa, we can probably count on one hand the number of bands that have made it abroad. And it's probably a lot less than that one hand. So,
I also think that bands don't actually understand what it means to be signed. They think that they sign this contract and then they're going to have money to tour, they're going to go to a fancy studio and record. I mean, there's still like international bands that will do 90% of the work themselves at home, at a home studio. If you look at like Andy Gillian from Morse Principia Est, he makes that band. He does all the composition, all the tracking of all the instruments at home in Australia. Then he flies to Sweden and meets up with the vocalist and an engineer. They record the vocals and master the whole thing while he's there. But 90% of the process is by Andy. And Andy's a bloody solid engineer. Like, if I could afford his rates, I'd work with him as well. All right. But being in Australia, that's
out of the question right now. Exactly.
Yeah. So, like, I think South African bands think, like, cool, I get signed and then I've made it. Bro, you get signed and that's when the work begins. You know? They also don't really get the concept of like getting an advance.
We've definitely been quite lenient. I was going to say, like, we tend to be quite easy on the bands that are represented by our labels. You know, we're not stepping on any of their necks. I think the most effort I have to put on any of the bands is making sure that the final master is, I can get the final master and I'm happy with it by the time the deadline for submission is. But if any of the bands were signed to a more global, multinational company, I should say, the amount of pressure they would be having to deal with would be astronomical. I mean, it is a job. I mean, I don't think you've seen the biggest bands in the world all say about how it's not glitz and glamour, but they wouldn't have it any way out. But the whole idea being is that it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I think you basically become like a family when it comes to touring and whatnot. And you've seen it with a number of bands where, I mean, band members come and go, you know, after 1 year of gigging. But if you put yourself on the schedule, like what the internationals actually have to deal with, where it could be, you know, 48 gigs in, you know, 52 weeks, you know, it's pretty draining, let alone the idea that a lot of the local bands haven't performed more than probably 2 gigs in 1 week, you know. You see bands like Iron Maiden now still performing 5 days a week, 6 days a week, you know.
Yeah. No, it's 100%. And also it's like having a job after a job, because a lot of these guys, like even international bands, the guys are still working full-time jobs. Like people think, oh, cool. Like, for example, the guys in Morse Principia Est, they're in a band. That's their job. No, the guys are probably working the Finnish guys are probably working in a supermarket, or like, you know, they still have day jobs, but now they have an extra job that has to actually be achieved in a deadline after hours. It's not this like, cool. And then you have the responsibility of effectively getting a loan from a record label. They give you
that's what it is. That big record deal. That big record deal. That's the thing. A lot of guys think when you get that €100,000 record deal, that oh my God, we're going to get literally spread that out and it's going to be peaches and cream. That money is going to go towards promo. It's going to go towards the recording time, the artwork, and whatever is basically left over that the label is happy with. The band can basically keep, but probably shouldn't look at spending that until that €100,000 gets made back by the label, because otherwise especially when they sign to the label, then now they can be held liable to pay that money back. And the minute you put that type of pressure on, you know, you better hope that your brand credibility is strong at that point. You know, we've seen it with the biggest bands in the world. I believe Fear Factory is even going through like a litigation issue now. Now, obviously, that's a huge, strong brand. So even Dino Cazares in himself can represent himself well in that case. But it's definitely something that I don't think a lot of South African bands actually take note of. The serious effort that it takes to become a stable name and tour, and the amount of effort. I've spoken to Duncan countless times about their travels with Vulvodynia, and I mean, it's hard. It's hard, and I mean, that was another. That's another thing. Obviously, Draconem Media and MMD are now doing a whole bunch of merch lines for a number of our bands. And I didn't want the bands to be disillusioned to the idea of, okay, well, now we have an international distribution line. Suddenly now you can get complacent and take it easy because you've got merch. It's actually completely the opposite. I think now the fact that there is a place where people can judge you according to even the logo on your t-shirt, they're going to need to step up and they're going to need to promote it, because the money's not going to come in. It's just because we get a licensing deal to have merchandise made locally, that doesn't mean that the merchandise is going to sell. It's still going to require effort on everybody's part in order to generate any sales for them. So, I mean, maybe you can actually just explain this whole idea now, like what brought you into actually doing it and creating this catalog yourself?
It's been a long time coming, man. I've been looking at I had a conversation with Duncan probably 3 years ago, and I asked him how they deal with their merch, and he gave the fact that they were doing it with some guy overseas and they pay a set amount and then he would handle the logistics. But he also mentioned like the idea of drop shipping, and I've spent on and off these past 3 years looking at different places, testing out the sites. Like, I mean, I probably spent $2 or $3 grand on Printful ordering samples and sending them to Chelsea's brother in the UK. You know, that's Printful's one of the drop shipping providers. And I set up some merch on Redbubble for Helica. But if I look at those two brands, the problem with something like Printful is you have to they take money from you and then the money comes into your account. So if a shirt is sold, it comes out of, like, say it's $15 for them to make the shirt. They'll charge you $15 and then the money comes into your account. So say you're selling it for $25. I don't like that idea, man. I don't like having everyone's merch on a page with me, but me basically paying in advance to produce merch, you know? So someone orders...
A lot of hope. Yeah, there's a lot of hope involved.
Money comes off and then
like to bankroll it.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, say the money doesn't clear in my account, or something gets stuffed with the exchange rates while it clears, or, you know, I don't want that burden on me. So that was a problem with Printful. You also have to have your own site, right? You have to host. So now I have to pay for hosting. I then looked at Redbubble, which is cool. It's very similar to Teespring, but like the cost of a shirt was $20, like the cost price. So now you're marking up your shirts to $30, you know?
Yeah.
It's not practical. No one's going to buy a $30 shirt for even in like a well-known band. You're going to be like pushing it to charge $30.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically I've been doing research for drop shipping, a whole bunch of stuff. And I thought, you know, cool, this Teespring idea, the shirts are reasonable quality. I've watched reviews on them. I saw that Demonic Resurrection, Demon Stealers band, they use Teespring as their merch store, and I was like, cool. It's actually relatively easy to set up. You know, you just have to have high quality artwork, which sometimes is a strain getting it from the bands.
Well, we learned that. Yeah, the people don't realize that the last 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks, while Alec and I have been getting this all up onto the site, there's been some atrocious amendments that have been needed to be made on designs. Just, again, every company is different, but yeah, it's also one thing that South African metal bands have to notch up on is merch, t-shirt, graphic design files.
Yeah.
Like, seriously,
if you're going to get signed to a label, They're going to expect you to generate artwork in a certain format. They're going to expect you, the WAVs to be in a certain format. So, like, before us as South African bands, like, get screwed over by a process, we need to learn internally how to do it right. Like, I've heard horror stories of bands submitting like ultra low res artwork to the printers of their album, and they're getting upset when their logo is pixelated on the final product. And it's like, what were you expecting? Like, give them the high res. Like, so yeah, this has been a cool learning process. But like, on the note of the merch store, it is quite easy to set up. For me, it's never been a case of, like, everything with Draconem has been truly noble calling. Like, the record side of thing, I'm not like, I will take half your sales because I spent 30 hours keep coaching you through the process. I've actually, like, never taken a sale, like a proportion from sales in that way. Like, I've said, guys, you print your stuff yourself, you pay for it yourself. I'll coach you through the process and make sure you give a high quality product. But I've never really taken a cut. Whereas this merch store now, it has a lot more administration stuff behind it.
Oh, of course.
You know, so uploading designs, uploading, like, handling payments. So if someone buys a shirt,
I was just going to say that the filtering of the money. I mean, how many bands are listed on there at the moment? I think you have like 16 bands or something, or 32 designs or something. That's a lot of merchandise. Those are all individual pieces that are going to have to get sent to somebody eventually, and it's all going to have to be generated up in the US and sent down to you. So yeah, there has to be some form of admin fee that has to be facilitated.
Yeah.
But I think the price that we gave for the units is still competitive. You will not really find a high quality, heavy cotton gilded print DTG design that is going to go for less than $20. Yes. I mean, excluding shipping, and even the international shipping. I think people forgot, or they might not have read further, but it actually, in the case of Teespring, it actually does benefit you to buy a larger order. Yes. I believe it's $12 shipping for worldwide for one piece of merch, but then only $4 for every additional T-shirt added to it. Yeah. So essentially, if guys could put together a bulk order, you're going to be able to get the product probably a good $5 cheaper. And we're not actually even taking that much money. I mean, but like you say, you've got your small administrative costs, but the cost of the print and the design, even up in the US, is almost $15 itself. So the return isn't huge, but God bless, the crappy exchange rate actually benefits us in this case.
Yeah. And I think you touched on something very pertinent there. This is an international store. And I think bands need to also understand that unless they're putting in graft to be internationally known, they're not going to sell 50 units a week on the store. They're going to sell maybe one, realistically, but at least we're presenting a unified front. You know, these are some high quality bands. Oh, sweet. I see the Overthrust t-shirt. Oh, cool. There's the Fallen Prophets t-shirt. And then, like, people, like overseas visitors, will be like, oh, cool. I wanted to buy Devil Speaks shirt, right? And they're like, oh, but there's this band here called Monolith. I wonder what they like. Oh, this avant-garde death metal is exactly what I'm looking for. You know, it's a new way. It's an extra, like, stream of marketing. And, like, I think bands need to realize that that is the point. Like, no one here is going to become millionaires from this merch store. Like, it's not going to happen. And it's
but it does give an option. It definitely gives another option and another web to the reach. I mean, obviously, local distribution and manufacturing has always been something that bands have taken upon themselves. You know, printing 100 to 200 units and selling it via their concerts that they play at. Obviously, during lockdown, a lot of bands, probably even some of the bands that you're involved with, you probably got a lot of backlog, you know, stock that's just sitting, waiting to be sold at the next gig, you know. But unfortunately, I think that's the one thing that lockdown really hit hard with. Certain bands had EPs and albums that came out literally on the cusp of tours, and those tours fell through. And unfortunately, we've dealt with some decent, respectable manufacturers in the past, but unfortunately, not all of those manufacturers are as lenient as the ones that we've dealt with. And a lot of bands have taken a serious knock because of this, you know?
Yeah. I think also that, like, I mean, ideally we replicate what we're doing with Teespring locally. So if you look at what Pins and Knuckles is doing with their Merch Matters movement, it's fantastic. Problem is, there's two problems. Like, white shirts only. Come on, we metal.
Yep,
like
which is very unmetal. It's very. I mean, you can. I bought a few pieces of the of Spectral Realm, and I think even a Displeased Disfigurement. But at the end of the day, the Forsaking Fate T-shirt that was on black, just the fact that it is on black is going to make it a more desirable top for me to pick if I had to choose between the three, for example. So, I mean, negotiations are hard, but I do believe that the guys at Pins and Knuckles are reasonable and they have the right intentions. Hell, they would never have offered this to the smallest subgenre in South Africa, you know, like musical subgenre, if they didn't care about it. But definitely not going to give up on them. I know you're going to keep working on it. I mean, again, this is about the South African music scene, like South African extreme metal scene. And we're only going to really get ahead by working together. I think we've proven for years on end that this DIY, do-it-yourself shit does not work. It will make you a little bit of money in the short term, but in the long term, we're in this together, and we have a lot more chance of getting proper reach to the world, which is over congested with new bands coming out every day from across the globe, if we stand together as a unified front, like you say, and market us all as.
I mean, that's the whole sort of your ethos, my ethos is let's be united. Let's show people like things we've discovered. Like another thing is, like, if you look at CD manufacturing, 10 years ago, bands had to order 500 CDs and they still have 400 CDs left, you know, sitting up in their attic.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, like that doesn't work. And we need to adapt and evolve. You know, classically, the first run of Soda shirts I ever did, I had to order 100 units. I still have some of those shirts, right? You know, we can't work this way. We need high quality, low unit stuff. And that's basically where a lot of my effort has been focused on. So I can share that when Forsaking Fate came down to do their Wacken Metal Battle performance, their EP was done, right? But they weren't doing it mass sale. They hadn't released it digitally. It was done. And we did a limited edition print for the Wacken Battle. They gave some of the CDs to the judges, just as a, you know, like an icing. They were those really high quality printed paper sleeves, right?
Yep, the proper old school single, you know, the hard cardboard.
Yes.
Yeah, good stuff.
Right. Double-sided, full color CD print. They did a run of 20, and it cost them 400 rand. All right. Now, who can say they can get physical copies of their album for 400 rand? No one. No one.
No.
Like ordering 500 units, you're going to spend 10 grand.
Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Yes. That's it. That is it. That's the
And
magic number nowadays. Like 10K, 5K, these round numbers when it comes to agencies, when it comes to printers, when it comes to t-shirts, it's always those big solid numbers. It's also because of the exchange rate. Everything always is like $20 or $15 or $10. It's always in those increments for the units. We haven't even thought about finals. I know Derek and Devil Speak did a limited run vinyl print, but it cost a hell of a lot also for them to do it. Luckily, they were able to sell it based upon the units that they manufactured. But again, all of these are things that we can, guys like you can open up the door, but the bands will need to put the effort in also. Like you were saying, with the CD, with the idea of possibly even looking into doing like a drop shipping effect for albums, it's going to take a bit of capital outlay, but the end result should be a lot less financially draining on the band, and the end result being more global reach for the band, which is something that none of the South African bands have really had the opportunity in doing. I mean, a few guys could put their accounts up on DistroKid or like Quadrophonica or like any In Grooves, any other online distribution sites. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a solid cohesive message pushed by everybody pushing that band, it's just going to get lost in the clutter. I really think like what we've been doing together with Draconem and with MMD Black has really, I mean, it's opened up the doors to a few people that would have known your guys' catalog, but might not have known our catalog, and vice versa.
No, 100%.
I mean, it's only going to get bigger. It's only going to get bigger. You and I aren't stopping. This lockdown might have knocked a lot of people down, but we've been pushing to do some good, big, fresh things going into this European summer coming up in the next month or so. So, we're not stopping.
Yeah, and like, I mean, on the point of like manufacturing stuff locally, you find manufacturers will often be open to doing things for cheaper if you can say, I will refer everyone I know to you. If you give me a high quality product at a reasonable price, I will never, like, I have to laugh. When I played this last tour with Forsaken Fate in PE, I was talking to Chris from Monolith, and he asked, like, where did you get the Forsaken Fate CDs done? And I was like, oh, yeah, you know, just this company called Blank Media. And he's like, Blank Media? He gets out a box of like unprinted CDs that he ordered at cost price from Blank Media, where they could have done it for him, done the printing for him, you know?
No, man.
It was hilarious.
Man. Oh, jeez, man. Shame, but like, I got to give the Monolith guys a lot of props. Their new album, it got a good reaction abroad, and I mean, again, we've been working recently with Devar PR from Canada, and they've just been just such a wonderful team. Curtis and his team have just been so fantastic, and they care about the more so African metal. They just blown away on the amount of quality music that is coming out of this continent that nobody pays attention to globally, because you've got the next big deathcore band coming out of Australia, or the next brutal slam band out of the US, or the next melodic band out of Sweden, or the next tech death band out of Canada. It's just, you never, again, like I said, there is a stigma with South Africa. We've only had 2 or 3 bands really make it big in the extreme metal scene and so forth, and therefore everybody else thinks, oh, okay, that is the genre that South African metal is about. But I've said it to countless guys, we have so many different genres of extreme metal in this country. And I'm not saying all of it is good, but a lot of it is. And as long as guys like you and I are there to kind of help these bands, I really do feel like we can do some good for a scene that we actually do genuinely care about, you know?
Yeah. I think it's also great because we have the opportunity to maybe curb some enthusiasm. And what like I mean by that is like, cool, you want to spend €1,000 hiring Pa Olofsson to do your album art. Maybe look at Onki from Indonesia, where his cost isn't the same as living in Sweden, you know? Like,
Yep.
we have this ability to shape that. We also have the ability to be like, this is your first album, you only want to sell it locally. A lot of local fans just want a physical product. They don't care if it's a digipack, if it's a CD, if it's a sleeve, if it's a thin jewel case. They don't care about the finish. They watch you and they're like, I like these guys, I want to support them. That's how sales work here. So like, unless you're shipping units overseas where they have like an expectation of digipack, we have the ability to shape these guys so that they don't spend 30,000 Rand making an album and like all the stuff that goes into
Well, I guess with that in mind, what are your thoughts on what do you think the future holds for South African extreme music?
I think there's it's kind of difficult because there's going to be guys that are willing to go the extra mile, and this might seem counter to my last point, but like, you got to spend the money, you got to spend it in the right places. Like, you got to tour. Like, I'm playing in Forsaken Fate. If I play a show with them in PE, it costs me $5,000. If I play with them in Durban, it's going to cost me about that as well. You know, like, you got to invest if you want to make an effort, right? You got to, like, if you want to make a lasting impression, you got to invest. But it doesn't mean that you got to buy a 60-page digipack locally with like 30 pages of band photographs that no one actually gives a shit about. Like, I think
Perspective is key.
Yes.
Like, know your market. Like, realize people want to support, but they also aren't loaded with cash.
Yes.
We can quite honestly say that the average metalhead, when given the choice of buying a CD or buying a round of beers for him and his mates at the bar, sorry band, sometimes like, they came to the concert, and that's a lot of the justification they need. You know, it's like, no, we came to the concert. But those guys that want to support, you want to make it as cost effective as possible, which is also probably why, maybe just taking one step back to the merch, when we quoted the price of $20, you know as well as I, $20 in the US for a piece of merch, it's almost the given for a high quality, 200-gram heavy gilded top with a DTG print. It's gonna cost that amount. You will not see a lot of local bands ever being able to justify the cost of selling a t-shirt for 350 to 400 Rand locally at a show.
No.
Although I went and I bought a Knotfest 2020 top in Japan, and it cost me $35 because merchandise is even more expensive in Japan. It cost me 7,500 yen for a t-shirt.
Sure.
It's the most expensive piece of gear I've ever bought, but it's quality merchandise. And I think that's kind of what bands need to realize, is that, and also even the fans, they need to realize that when you're actually supporting the band, it's an extension of your support, that they can support you by giving you the best product that they can. Like you were saying, if the local supporters could justify paying 250 to 350 for a vinyl at a concert, then the local bands would be able to justify laying out that money to pay the manufacturing of those costs. But you have a situation like you with the Surdus albums, and probably 90% of the other local bands where they've got half of their stock CDs, T-shirts, whatever, gathering dust in the closet because they haven't been able to sell it because they didn't work out what the end costs were going to be and what people can actually afford to pay for a thing.
And to me, it's totally not making your product cheaper, or like cheapening the quality of your product. If you generate something that's cost effective, say it costs 12 Rand to do a thin CD pressing, sell that CD. If you've got a EP, you can sell it for $50. People will pay that. It's like, it's basically less than 2 drafts now, you know?
Yes.
Like, people will pay 50 Rand for a CD, but if you charging 180 for your fancily made digipack locally, maybe people won't be prepared to because now you're talking like around, like you said, you know? So it's like balancing, it's a very careful balancing act. And I think that's why like drop shipping is the future. Like, if we can organize high quality drop shipping of CDs, cool. Then people overseas can get the CD that they want in the format they want it.
And at the highest quality. Yes, that's the thing. Like, that's what I wanted to go back to. The price that we're charging for the T-shirts is totally justifiable by the quality of the merch that the people will get. You will not get a higher quality design T-shirt on the market. That is just the way it goes. But that comes at a price. And unfortunately, if, like you say, if you want to cheapen the process, cheapen it out in a cost-effective way to support your local fans, you know, but looking to a cheaper, smaller CD single, like, rather than what's going to be having to get resold at €20 on Amazon later, you know. So again, it's like, it's something that Draconem and MMD Black have both been able to put our heads together. And again, this is the whole idea with Teespring and the Draconem site is open the doors to the international market. We have a lot of supporters, a lot of international fans of the MMD white product, of all the Cytrons that we've done, that will love to buy some of our older merch that we've never had available. And $20 plus $12 shipping is not a lot of money. In fact, that is right on the money what you would pay if you were in the US or Canada or Brazil wanting to order a T-shirt from the United States. So honestly, if we can get the CDs, that is basically, it's another check on the checklist of opportunities and doors that we can open to the bands. But they need to step up, like you say. It's not easy. We're not going to just, we're giving everybody all of this. It doesn't mean that it's suddenly now going to be easy living. You know, they're going to have to put their effort in.
Effort is key. But yeah, I really think that that's a key thing we need to nail home, is like, appeal locally. And to do that, like, let's use the T-shirt example, right? Say you want to sell shirts. So you're going to struggle to sell them at 350 Rand a shirt at a show, right? Cool. Have a design that is single color print ready for screen printing, right? Cool. That's a cheaper design. You're going to spend like 100 Rand on that shirt. It's not going to cost 250 Rand to manufacture that shirt, right? You can sell it for 150 and you'll still have people buying that shirt, but have a range. Have the range that you're able to support the different types of fans. Have the range to be able to print a high quality color shirt that goes overseas, you know?
That's right. You see it with Vulvadinia. Again, I'll just bring it all right back. I went to their concert and they had white T-shirts that were printed by Pins and Knuckles, but a double print, but literally black on white, 250 Rand. They had P-caps, white logo, not the elaborate sewn in, 250 Rand. They had the red, simple Vulvadinia logo. I think maybe a tour date on the back in red, 250 Rand.
Yes.
That's it. You know, they get like, if there's one thing that the local bands need to realize is that the local fans are just not loaded with cash. What we will give people the opportunity for, though, if we do find a company locally to manufacture tops, we can guarantee the fans that they're going to be the highest quality that we can provide. That being said, it might cost a bit of money. It might cost 300 or 350 rand, but I know Alec is as meticulous and particular as me, that he will never want to put out a subpar product, especially if it's being distributed through another company. So people might have to pay a little bit more money, but if we do organize a local company, it will be a company that will be able to manufacture at the same cost as probably what we could do at Teespring. So people will be able to save by ordering locally and not having to pay $12 to $16 for shipping. So
yeah. Plus the extra cost that people don't remember when ordering a shirt from the overseas is the 40% import duty because of textile tax, right?
Oh yeah, oh
So
yeah. I had a like the funny thing is when you import something, people always tend to forget the shipping costs and then the custom duties that come with it. And I've had tops that I would get 60% off, maybe pay 300 rand to deal with a company like Aramex to have a courier to South Africa. But the minute it hits customs, they could hit you with 20% VAT, 40 to 50% custom duties on the selling price of the item, not the discounted price that you bought that item.
Yeah.
So you could end up paying more in custom duties and shipping than what you paid for the actual product in the first place. So people need to be aware of that also. But we are aware of that, and that's why we're busting our asses to figure something out to make this cost effective for everybody. So,
well, 100%.
yeah.
But I think, yeah, going full circle, Teespring is international, united front, and its visibility for the band. That's the whole point. Like, and they're backed by, like, if you stay on a page for long enough of one of the products, a pop-up comes up and says, we give you 100% money back guarantee. You know, any company that can say that, bro, I don't need all the samples from them. I know that they can do the job, because someone gets a shirt and they're particular and they don't like it, they're going to send it back. And it's
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think we're reaching the top of the next half hour. But yeah, I think we will try get together again soon. Maybe we'll try bring on a couple of other guests from our side for the next conversation. But yeah, it's been great to chat to you. Hopefully people that tuned in actually found this informative. Like I said, you and I got to just keep working on new ideas for the future, and I know you're going to be busting your ass on new music coming up. So any other final things you want to kind of say? Any releases you want to hint at coming out?
Well, yeah, I'm busy working, I guess, on the Helica album, but that's going to be quite an arduous process because I'm a symphonic metal guy, and I struggle to get myself in that mindset of writing the slammy, chuggy stuff. But yeah, I really want to do that, and I'm looking at like we were talking about, like drop shipping CDs. So I'm looking at trying to test the waters with a company about drop shipping CDs, and hopefully get one of my projects on Amazon. They've already said that they can do that, so I'll test the waters with that and see how that process goes. And like, I mean, it's just increased visibility, and it's like bragging rights of being able to say, yeah, it's on Amazon.
Here we are. Here we are.
I recently finished my solo album, Incarnate Deity. Yeah, that was a fun process. Signed up to a label in the States for two albums, and they're going to do the digipack pressing, and yeah, so that's where that journey begins. It's nice to
Yeah.
sort of have some
I'm sure we're going to
validation.
hear a lot more. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about that coming up in the next few months as we get closer to the release date. So I guess we'll keep people hanging on for that. But yeah, like thank you so much for having this chat. Again, we'll be speaking very soon, and hopefully we can bring on a few guests for a few future chats, because I think the public will enjoy actually getting to know our local metal boys a little bit better.
No, 100%. Thanks, Lyle.
Cool, guys. Well, yeah, hope you guys have an awesome rest of the weekend, and keeping safe during this whole lockdown period. Keep that social distancing going, and yeah, we will catch up with you guys soon. Thanks again.
Peace.